Hey guys, Jim here, and welcome to the first ever episode of Digging Into. What this series is going to look at is, each lesson we're going to examine a different song or a different solo, and I'm not going to hold your hand with this. I am going to show you the riff and the harmony and talk about it a little bit, but this isn't really about that. There's a lot of good, note-for-note tutorials out there and tabs already out there on the internet. So this is going to be a little bit more of a, we're going to dig into the theory and the harmonic analysis and hopefully get you some cool ideas out of it that will make you a better player. So I know that some of these theoretical ideas, there's going to be a couple different ways to interpret them, but I'll be as clear as I can. And without further ado, welcome to Digging Into Scuttle Buttin by Stevie Ray Vaughan. Alright guys, now here's the riff slow, okay? It's basically open E minor pentatonic and second position E minor pentatonic combined. Right? So you could just look up the 5 E minor pentatonic boxes if you don't know that. But here's the riff. 2 to 4 G string. Open B, open E, open B, slide 3 to 5 on B, open E, pull off on the 3rd fret of the D string. Now either a short slide to a pull off or a short bend to a pull off, and then land on that 2nd fret E there. And then you're going to pedal the open E string with the 3rd fret and 3rd fret on the B and E strings, which is the flat 7 and the flat 3 of that chord, which makes E7 sharp 9. I'm going to talk more about these sharp 9 chords later, okay? They're pretty important to the way that Stevie Ray Vaughan plays and to blues in general. So, alright, great. Now, the second riff is basically the same thing, but when you're ready to go to the A chord, you do a double pull off on the G string, 2nd fret, and the D string, 2nd fret, and then open A. Then this chord is a drop 2 voicing, which I encourage you to look up. They're great. It's a great way of learning all your 7th chords everywhere. Anyway, this particular one is root on the 2nd fret of the G string, and it's 2, 2, 2, 3. So you just pedal that the same way you did the first one. Open A. Then you go back to 1. E7 again. Now the last one is the same riff. Pull off again. Land on the B note on the 2nd fret of the A string. This is B7 sharp 9. There's that sharp 9 again. And what that is 2nd fret, don't voice this string, the D string. Then 2nd fret and 3rd fret on the G and B strings. Right? So that's just the root, the flat 7, and the flat 3, which is also the sharp 9. Cool? So that lick you just saw is one of 2 that I've chosen to look at this time because I think they're particularly teachable moments. This first one I like to look at because it teaches sharp 9 ideas, and I can use it to teach Mixolydian ideas as well, and how actually you can combine all of these ideas together, and that's what gives you the blues sound. But before I can do that, I've got to dig into how to play the lick, right? So, first of all, it's going to be top 2 strings for this first part, and it's going to be 12 and 10, B and E string, 10 and 9, B and E string, and 8 and 7, B and E string. And then you're going to bend this G note here on the 8th fret, up about a half step. Right? Then you're going to do this little walk down. 10 on the E, 8 on the B, 7 on the E, 8 on the B, 2 on the 7th fret of the E string. Then I'm just going to include this little tag when he switches to that A7 chord in the harmony of the song. He slides 6 on the G string, 5 on the B string, 5 on the E string. Okay, so let's talk about those dominant 7 sharp 9 chords. First of all, in the blues, there's 3 dominant 7 chords, one built on the 1, the 4, and the 5 of the major scale. In this case, that's E, A, and B7. So already, something is a little weird with the way that we're treating these chords, right? Why are there 3 of them in a key? As you know, there shouldn't be if, according to the rules of tonal harmony. Similarly, they're not necessarily resolving by fifth. The 1 going to the 4 does, and the 5 going to the 1 does. But they don't always do that depending, So they're not really being used traditionally here. And one of the ways we treat them differently, like I said, is with the tensions they'll take and the scales will play over them, right? Normally you'd play something like Mixolydian over a dominant 7 chord or maybe a major pentatonic or something like that. But we don't really do that in the blues, right? We play minor pentatonic. And so the 7 sharp 9 chord is kind of born out of the way that the dominant 7 harmony is interacting with the minor pentatonic scale. So let's just look at the way we spell both of them. Really, intervallically, which means comparing the notes to the major scale. It's 1, major 3rd, perfect 5th, flat 7 for the dominant 7 chord. And for the minor pentatonic scale, it's 1, flat 3, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, flat 7, 1. And then it just, repeats in whatever boxes. But it's, it's the same notes, right? So one of the first things we notice is that most of them are the same. Actually, all of them are the same, except for the 4, which I'm just going to tell you, don't worry about that for now, and the flat 3. Now, why would you play a scale with a minor 3rd in it, or a flat 3 over it, when the chord has a major 3rd in it? And the answer is, well, because then that flat 3 is going to sound like a tension. And if you know how tensions work, they're just the other notes from the scale that you didn't put in the chord. So in this case, we put the 1, 3, 5, 7 in the chord. The tensions are going to be the 2, 4, and 6, but we don't call them that. The 2 becomes the 9, the 4 becomes the 11, and the 6 becomes the 13 because we move them kind of up a couple octaves in orchestration and stuff, more classical music stuff, so that they aren't as dissonant and they become more consonant. But don't worry about that for right now. Just know that the 2 becomes the 9. So really when I'm saying sharp 9, I'm saying sharp 2. And if you sharp the 2 of the major scale, E, it becomes that G, which is the same as the flat 3rd, right? So if you flat the 3rd, or you sharp the 2 with the same note, that's called being enharmonic. But in this case, it means that we have, these 2 notes interacting, the 3rd and the flat 3 or the sharp 9, and that's where the sharp 9 comes from. It's just because we're continually playing that flat 3rd note from the minor pentatonic scale over the dominant 7 chord. So one way to play dominant 7 sharp 9 is 0, 2, 0, 1, 3, 3. And a more common way would be starting on the A string, 7, 6, 7, 8. And that is just like the quintessential blues sound. I've even heard dominant 7 sharp 9 chords called the Hendrix chord because he used to play it so much and Stevie does all the time. But that's kind of where that's coming from. So in the lick, that part right there, Stevie is taking that sharp 9, the G there, and bending it up to the major 3rd. And that's just one of the really cool ways that he's mixing that up. And the rest of that lick is Mixolydian, which is coming up. Okay, so what is Mixolydian, right? Mixolydian is essentially a mode, and I can't delve into modality here, I don't have enough time, but I encourage you to look it up or ask me about it or something. But essentially, a mode is just a scale that has all the same notes as one of the major scales, but you're having a different root. One of the other notes in the major scale has now become your root or your home. So in this case, Mixolydian is the fifth mode, so it has all the same notes as the major scale that's a perfect fifth below it, which, in this case, if you think about it, is A, right? A major. So that means it has 3 sharps and all that stuff. It also has all the same chords. So if you think about it, all the chords in E Mixolydian are E dominant 7, F sharp minor, G sharp diminished, A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D. Right? And this is kind of, like I said, the Mixolydian approach, because of what I just explained to that tonal harmony, it's kind of going back the other way into more traditional approaches to, or sounds, to play over a dominant 7 chord. And it sounds a little happier, it's a little brighter. It's got a pretty cool sound. If you've got something like that. It's kind of a little more open. You've probably heard something similar to that kind of stuff before, but it brings out a different side into the blues playing, brightens it up a little bit. And so that's what Stevie's doing here. He's breaking up the monotony of the minor pentatonic scale, and he's playing, like I mentioned earlier, those chords. So here's the first part of that lick. There's B minor, then A major, then this is E major, but he's just bending up that sharp 9 like we talked about earlier. And then these passing tones are coming from the scale Mixolydian as well. And then even that third is either coming from over the A chord that he slides up to on the 6th fret, is either coming from the Mixolydian mode or just the chord, I guess, is another great way to think about it. But the cool thing is, when you blend the Mixolydian mode with the minor pentatonic of the key, so E, you get a lot of really cool sounds. And in fact, when you go to the A chord, you can play A Mixolydian, and when you go to the B chord, you can play B Mixolydian, but you still keep mixing them with A minor pentatonic. And it has a really hip sound, and that's what Stevie did there, right? Also, another cool thing is that you can if you take a couple of the notes of the Mixolydian mode out, you end up with the major pentatonic. So basically now your options are, you can play E minor pentatonic over the whole thing, over all 3 chords, but then over each specific chord you can play its Mixolydian or its major pentatonic, which is a really cool way of kind of emphasizing the chord changes and breaking up. I hear Joe Bonamassa do that all the time too. And you'll see them even borrow notes from those things, like in classic Stevie riffs, like that too is arguably coming from the Mixolydian. And sometimes they'll just straight up play E major pentatonic. But that's also arguably just a reduction of the Mixolydian mode. So when you start throwing all this stuff together, right, that's the classic minor third to the major third. That's when you start really getting that Texas blues sound. You're mixing all this stuff together. It's kind of like a gumbo or something. It's pretty cool. And so the last thing I wanted to say is, you don't have to think of them as, A mixo and B mixo and E mixo, because that can be kind of hard when you're just right here. So I just compare them all to the relative, to E. So if you know about modality, you'll know that E Mixolydian obviously is the same as E Mixolydian. A Mixolydian is the same thing as E Dorian, and B Mixolydian is the same thing as E Ionian. So if it's easier for you to think of it like that, maybe that's something you want to consider. Last thing I want to talk about, tritones. You just saw that other little part of the solo I played, And what a tritone is it's it's the interval between you've probably heard a diminished fifth or an augmented fourth, but really it's one major second, major third, perfect fourth. It's the one between the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth in relation to the one, so we call that a tritone interval. It's like the YYZ thing, right? That always helps me hear it, but whatever. Anyway, Stevie's doing that here. He's sliding into it chromatically. But the reason he's playing that is because tritones are a part of the dominant 7 chord. It's a part of the dominant 7 chord sound. So if you look at this voicing I have here, which is a drop 2, it's 12th fret, 13th fret, 12, 12. 12 on D, 13, 12, 12. And he's sliding into the bottom part of that. And it just happens that that tritone interval within a dominant chord will always be the 3 and the flat 7, which are, if you're into jazz, the 2 of the most common chords that you target when you're trying to land on chord tones, right? So it's really going to bring out the sound of that chord too, even if someone's just playing a riff, really fills it out, makes it a little beefier, gets the important things and determines the chord quality, which is what makes it sound so cool, at least to me. And Stevie obviously did it too, so he liked it. So what he's doing here, yeah, so then you notice when it goes to the A7 chord, he takes it down 1 fret, right, to 11 and 12. Now, like I said, that's still a tritone. The tritones are going to be the 3rd and the 7th, but in this case, they got inverted. The 3rd is on the bottom, and the 7th is on the top. And that comes from this kind of A voicing to me. 12 on the E, high E, 10 on the B, 12 on the G, 11 on the D. Right? You can see it's the bottom of that too. But once again, it was just inverted. Because tritones invert to tritones. Whenever you drop the octave. If you have a 3rd, if you drop the octave, it becomes, a 6th of some kind, right? And basically you're adding up to 9, but that doesn't matter. Just know that if you invert a tritone, it's still a tritone, which is cool, and it means on the guitar, it's always going to kind of look the same, and you're moving up kind of like that, right? Except for the G B, because the interval thing between those 2 strings. But essentially you can follow the entire 12-bar blues chord progression and land on the crucial chord tones just by moving 1 fret at a time. So basically, to think about it this way, you've got this one and its inversions over the E, move down 1 fret for A, and then move 1 fret up from E, or you can think of it as 2 frets up from A, to that B one, which is the same exact shape. It's just 14, 12, 14, 13, with the root in the B string. And that works the same way. So if you think about it, E7, A7, B7, B7, E. And so they're also, so that's what he's doing. Then he goes to A. Then he slides back up and resolves it on a new chord. 13, 12, 12. And if he wanted to, he could keep that going to the 5. Right? And they're also cool because then when you invert them, you can target those notes. So if you just think about it like over the E, and then when you go to the 4, see what I did there when I went back from the 4 back to the 1? Just slid in there and it just sounds right on like you're nailing the chord. And then for the 5, let's go from 1 to 5. You can just kind of target, like I said, just go 1 fret up from wherever your E, your 1 chord was, tritone, and target those. you're in a more traditional blues, you play the turnarounds. Or to the 5. So, yeah, that's just one of the things I like to do. You can imply anywhere you find that 3rd and the 7th in the chord. You know that you can go down 1 fret for the 4 chord, or up 1 fret for the 5 chord, and it really helps me kind of visualize those tones, work on some 2-note licks, follow the chord changes, and find those target notes. So, I hope this whole thing was helpful, and I know it was a little long-winded. I'll try to make it more concise in the future. And thanks for appreciating the video.